Changing ways of life, the commercial revolution. By the 1600s, the nation had replaced the city and village as the basic economic unit in Europe. Nations competed for markets and trade goods. New business methods were instituted for investing money, speeding the flow of wealth, and reducing risks in commercial ventures. These changes, which came to be known as the commercial revolution, formed the roots of modern financial and business life. New business methods. Launching an overseas trading venture was a major undertaking. The financial backer of the voyage had to raise money for supplies and to hire a crew. Often several years passed before a fleet finished trading overseas and returned home. Only then could the initial investment be recovered. Governments and rich merchants alone had enough money to back such trading voyages, and even then they needed financial assistance. At first, merchants turned to bankers for the money to finance their ventures. Families like the Medici of Florence, Italy, and the Fuggers of Augsburg, Germany, loaned money as part of their operations. By the 1500s, these families were so wealthy that they had accepted deposits, made loans, and transferred funds over long distances. Both banking families had branches in several European cities and also made loans to European monarchs. By the 1600s, however, these banking families were beginning to be replaced by government-chartered banks. These banks accepted deposits of money and charged interest on loans. Before long, the banks had to provide other services. They issued banknotes and checks, making large payments in heavy coins a thing of the past. They acted as money changers, exchanging currencies from other countries. The banks even provided official exchange rates for foreign currency. Individual merchants who wanted to invest in exploration often raised money by combining their resources in joint stock companies, organizations that sold stock or shares in the venture, enabling large and small investors to share the profits and risks of a trading voyage. If a loss occurred, investors would lose only the amount they had invested in shares. The sharing of risk provided a stable way of raising funds for voyages. A few joint stock companies became rich and powerful through government support. For example, the Dutch government gave the Dutch East India Company a monopoly in trade with Africa and the East Indies. It also gave the company the power to make war, to seize foreign ships, to coin money, and to establish colonies and forts. In return, the government received customs duties or taxes on imported goods from the company's trade. Increase in money. As gold and silver flowed into Europe from abroad, the supply of coined money increased. This, in turn, led to inflation, or a dramatic rise in prices. Money, however, became more widely available for large enterprises, and ideas changed about the nature and goals of business. Gradually, a system based on the belief that the goals of business was to make profits took shape. Individuals known as entrepreneurs combined money, ideas, raw materials, and labor to make goods and profits. Profits were then used to expand the business and develop new ventures. An entrepreneur in the cloth industry, for example, would buy wool and employ spinners to make the wool into yarn. Weavers and dryers would also be hired to turn the yarn into cloth. The entrepreneur would then sell the cloth on the open market for a price that brought a profit. Of course, entrepreneurs took risks when they put up capital for business. They could lose their investment if prices fell, or workers could not produce goods at a specified time or a specific market. In the 1600s, the greatest increase in trade took place in the countries bordering the Atlantic Ocean: Portugal, Spain, England, and the Netherlands, in large part because they had the largest colonial empires. Italian cities such as Venice and Genoa, formerly the leading trade centers in Europe, found themselves cut out of overseas trade as trade routes and fortunes gradually moved westward toward the Atlantic Ocean and the Americas. Mercantilism. A new theory of national economic policy called mercantilism also appeared. This theory held that a state's power depended on its wealth. Accordingly, the goal of every nation was to become as wealthy as possible. Europeans believed that the measure of a nation's wealth was the amount of bullion, or gold and silver, it owned. One Venetian summed up the general feeling about bullion. It is the sinews of all government. It gives it its pulse, its movement, its mind, soul, and it is its essence and its very life. It overcomes all impossibilities, for it is the master. Without it all is weak and without movement. Under mercantilism, nations could gain wealth by mining gold and silver at home or overseas. Thus, Spain sent conquistadors to the Americas to seize the silver and gold mines of the Aztec and Inca empires. Governments could also gain wealth through trade. Nations sought to create a favorable balance of trade by exporting more goods than they imported. The gold and silver received for exports would exceed that paid for imports. This greater wealth meant greater national power and influence in the world. To increase national wealth, governments often aided businesses producing export goods. They sold monopolies or the right to operate free of local competition to producers in certain key industries. They also set tariffs or taxes on imported goods to protect local industries from foreign competitors. Colonies or overseas territories ruled a parent country, were highly valued in the mercantilist system. They are both the sources of raw materials as well as vital markets for finished goods provided by the parent country. The primary reason for having colonies was to help make the parent country self-sufficient. European daily life. The commercial revolution had a noticeable impact on European society. Merchants prospered most from the expansion of trade and empire. They began to surpass the nobility in both wealth and power. Hereditary nobles had to rely on rents from their land for wealth, but rents did not rise as fast as prices. The newly rich entrepreneurs set trends and lifestyles. Coffee houses became their favorite gathering places where business and gossip were exchanged. A Spaniard described a coffee house in Amsterdam in 1688. They are of great usefulness in winter, with their welcoming stoves and tempting pastimes. Some offer books to read, others gaming tables, and all have people ready to converse with one. One man drinks chocolate, another coffee, one milk, another tea, and practically all of them smoke tobacco. In this way, they can keep warm, be refreshed, and entertain for little expense listening to the news. In the countryside, however, peasants lived as meagerly as they ever had. The French writer Jean de La Bruyere remarked that European peasants worked like animals, lived in hovels, and survived on a diet of water, black bread, and roots. A global exchange. During the commercial revolution, Europe's population grew rapidly. In 1640, Europeans numbered about 100 million. They also had become more mobile. Towns expanded outside their walls as more and more people left rural areas to be closer to centers of trade. Europe's growing population demanded more goods and services. This demand was met by Europe's increasing contacts with the rest of the world. As Europe's trade expanded, it contributed to a worldwide exchange of people, goods, technologies, ideas, and even diseases that had profound consequences for the entire globe. Known as the Columbian Exchange, after Christopher Columbus, the transfer of products from continent to continent brought changes in ways of life throughout the world. Europeans brought wheat, grapes, and livestock to the Americas. From Native Americans, Europeans acquired foods such as corn, potatoes, tomatoes, beans, and chocolate. Easy-to-grow food crops such as the potato fed Europe's growing population. Some foods, such as corn, also spread to Asia and Africa. From Asia and Africa, Europeans acquired tropical products, bananas, coffee, tea, and sugarcane, and luxury goods such as ivory, perfume, silk, and gems. New global trading links increased the movement of people and cultures from continent to continent. Europeans seeking wealth or fleeing economic distress and religious persecution moved to the Americas and other parts of the world. They exchanged food, ideas, and practices with the people living in those areas. European influences profoundly affected local cultures. Traders spread European languages, and missionaries taught Christianity and European values. Wealthy Europeans, in turn, developed an interest in the arts, styles, and foods of Asia. At the same time, the drastic decline of the Native American populations and the forcible removal of Africans to the Americas revealed that European expansion often had a disruptive effect on cultures in other parts of the world.